Welcome to this session. We're going to be spending the next about hour and a half talking about coaching strategies, and we're going to talk specifically about how do you provide coaching strategies for the intensive level technical assistance. And as you know, the key terminology now is early learning and development programs, ELDPs, instead of child care programs. So we'll be using that terminology kind of on and off through the day. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. So those of you who don't know me, I'm Gary Glasenapp, and I work across the street at the Teaching and Research Institute. And I will be one of the facilitators for today. And Cori is also be co-facilitating. And we've been around for quite some time and doing this and have done quite a few trainings with a lot of you. So some of this is going to be just kind of a review, but what we really want to do is have a lot of conversations with you because you're the ones that are out there doing training, you're the ones that are out there doing coaching, and we really want to give you the opportunity to share what you're doing with the other people and share the things that really have worked well for you. Just a quick show of hands. Quality Improvement Specialists. The majority of you. We've got one. Oh, you. Network specialists, okay. How many of you, we have some actual directors in here too, right? At least one. So again, and that's good. That's really our target audience for this session was really looking at quality improvement specialists, those people who are actually out there working with programs and providing technical assistance and support. So that's really what this particular session is involved for. So we're going to start out and do an icebreaker activity, and in front of you, you should have a copy of this is red. This is not pink. A pink sheet and a green sheet. So your task to start out with is to, on the green sticky card, write one word that comes to mind when you hear the word coaching. So just one word. When somebody says coaching, what does that mean to you? So put that on your green card. And you have some kits in front of you. If you'd use a marker that writes kind of big, because we're going to have you come up and actually post these on the wall. So if you'd write big and with a colored marker or something, that will help us when we do some activities later on. So again, on the green sticky, one word that comes to mind when you hear the word coaching. And then on the pink/red sticky, what's one word that comes to mind when you hear the word training? Do we have all of them up there? Notice any similarities? Bunches. We'll be talking about that in a few minutes when we talk about the difference between coaching and training, because a lot of people use those words interchangeably, and we want to get across the concept that there are some subtle differences between the two, and we'll talk about as we go through. So, as far as session outcomes for the next hour and a half or so, this is what the outcome that we have for this particular session. It's really so you'll have an understanding of the effective coaching strategies that can be used to provide intensive level technical assistance. How many of you were involved in the training in the spring, I think, where Tom talked about through the different levels of technical assistance, universal, targeted, and intensive? We're going to quickly review that, but we're really going to concentrate on what are those strategies that you use to provide the intensive level technical assistance, because that seems to be what we've heard people are struggling with. So that's really what we're going to be concentrating on today. And then to accomplish that, a couple objectives, and the first one is just kind of the overview now that we're going through. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time and talk about what are some of the differences between coaching and training. Or are there differences between coaching and training? Then we'll be talking about, as a quick review, what are the three levels of tiers or levels of technical assistance as far as the QRIS model goes. So we'll talk about that and how that relates to QRIS and how that relates to you as quality improvement specialists, and also as if we would have had just some other community trainers in here, how that applies to you. And then finally, we'll be talking about what are some of the effective coaching strategies that you have used or you could use. And I guess there is one more. A couple closing activities. So that is what we're going to be covering in the next hour and a half or so. As we talk through this, just one thing as we go through this, to remember what is your primary role as a quality improvement specialist. Your primary role is really to help programs with program improvement. Your primary role is not to help them develop their portfolio. So really the activities that you're going to be doing as far as coaching and training really should revolve around program improvement. And that's really what we're going to be stressing and talking about today. Does that surprise anybody? Good. So what are the differences between coaching and training? And I also already cheated and told you there is a difference. So this is the definition, and you've got this in your packet also from the National Association for the Education of Young Children and the NACRA Early Childhood Education Professional Development Training and Technical Assistance Glossary. So as you read through that, I'm not going to read that for you, but as you read through this training definition, are there key parts of this definition that stands out? So this is how NAEYC and NACRA are defining training. Anything specific? Any key words? Anything that stands out?
Well, I guess my question gets raised about the difference between skills and dispositions.
So what is the difference between a skill and a disposition? Anybody? I think when we're talking about disposition, we're talking more about attitudes. What is your attitude towards a particular topic?
Well, that does make it a very comprehensive definition.
So it's not, a lot of times we concentrate so much on knowledge and skills, we forget all about that we're also dealing a lot with attitudes. And especially programs that we're working with, you need to overcome some of those attitudes before you can actually deal with some of the knowledge and skills. Yeah. So,
the training is also a learning experience. I really like that because it is a give and take, and training you are also learning and vice versa, so it's ongoing.
It's ongoing. It's a learning experience. Again, delivered by you, the professionals, and you have some.
Oh, that's exactly what I was going to say, by professionals.
Yeah. So it's somebody with some knowledge or background or some skills that you're actually training or departing knowledge for. So that is their definition of training. And they also talk about training really is designed to build or enhance knowledge and competencies. That's why we do training. We also do training, and it can be focused on just disseminating information. How many of you do trainings that are just to get information out to people? We all do that.
We're doing that right now.
When we're doing training, we want to do it so they actually understand the content. How many of you have done a training and by the end of the training you were so jazzed up, it was the most wonderful training in the world, and you get to the end and you found out you lost them, that they didn't understand what in the world you were talking about? You're all sure that's never happened to you. No. But again, making sure that they have the opportunities to actually understand and comprehend the content that you're trying to depart to them.
I have a question on that,
Yes.
just because it does come up now more than it has in the past, because we have no, in our Child Care Resource and Referral Agency, no criteria to take a Set 2 other than its intermediate knowledge, and now everybody wants a Set 2, and I was doing a Set 2 training on contracts and stuff, and they had to write policies and stuff, and I had a few students that just weren't at that level.
And that,
And then I, so and I was just like, this is an intermediate class, and I can give you the forms, but I can't spend that much time.
Yeah, when you do that next level up, you're assuming a certain basic
Yes.
level of content, but a lot of times you find out that they don't have that. And so what does that put you in as a trainer? Do you go back and review that content so everybody's on the same page? Or do you just say, I'm sorry, this is the content, this is what we have to do?
Well, I tried to pair them up with someone that understood it, so that they could
Super.
work in a team.
Yeah. Take advantage of the expertise that you have in your audience. So again, comprehending, we don't want them just to sit in their chair for an hour or 2 hours and get their credit. But a lot of times we do trainings and we ask them specifically, why are you here? I am here because this allows me to get 2 hours of Set 2 training in special needs. That's why they're there.
My director told me I needed to come.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's nice to know that. So again, just knowing why they're there. Okay, again, application knowledge your skills and related attitudes and dispositions. And again, they say attitudes and dispositions as separate, but I would kind of clump those together. And just analyzing content. And again, the training is planned and it's conducted based on professional standards or assessments. So you're doing that training for a reason. It's based on some type of need. And we'll talk about that need specific to you in a little bit. And you do all sorts of wonderful activities. So when you do trainings, you do some lecture, you do some discussion, you do some, God forbid, role plays. And Cori knows that role plays are my actual absolute favorite thing to do in trainings. No, not.
We'll be doing that for the next 55 minutes.
Yeah, so if there's any role play in this session, Cori will be leading it. So, but again, just making sure that participants have a variety of activities that they're going to be doing during the training so they can actually understand the content. And that gets back to just what we know about adult learning. You know, the tactile, kinesthetic, audio, visual, how do people learn, and making sure that we're doing that. So that's kind of training. Now this is the definition for coaching, also from the same source. And as you read through that, are there, again, any keywords that stand out in that definition? And again, if you can't read it on the screen, you have it in front of you. And then we'll talk a little bit about what might be some of the differences between the two. So any keywords come out on this definition of coaching or anything? Yes, if you've got a highlighter, relationship-based. A lot of times when we talk about coaching, it's really taking time to develop those relationships. And a lot of times when we do trainings, it is a one-shot deal, unfortunately. But really one of the key things about coaching is it is relationship-based.
I sort of feel like training is a one-shot deal because we expect it to be a one-shot deal. There's no reason it couldn't be ongoing and relationship-based, except that we don't expect it to be.
Yeah, and what do we know about adult learning? Are one-shot trainings effective for people? No. So we know it's not necessarily that effective, but that's currently the way the system is set up. So just recognizing that up front. Any other things that definitely? So yeah, so it's a relationship-based approach where you're actually trying to achieve a specific goal. So you're going to set a goal. The reason that we're doing this coaching activity or activities is that we're trying to address a specific goal. Anything else that comes out?
Looking at an individual or a group.
Okay, so you can coach with just an individual person, or you can coach at a particular program. You may find a program, they all need the same information, so you can coach a group of people. But a lot of times people say, well, training is groups, coaching is individual, but coaching can also be done in small groups also. Yeah.
I like the fact it talks about goal setting and achievement, which talks about a long-term relationship to help them achieve the goal.
And you actually want them to be able to do something. So you set a goal, and what are the steps or the activities that you need to do in order for them to achieve that goal? So that's going to kind of guide the coaching activities that you're going to be doing. What is your goal, and then how are we going to get there? Yeah, Terry?
I also really like the fact that it says that the coach serves in a different professional role than the recipient.
Yeah, a lot of times it may be somebody different than they would normally be interacting with you with. That's not necessarily the case for you guys as quality improvement specialists. You probably have a relationship for a lot of the programs that you're dealing with. So it may,
Looked at it in a different way.
yeah.
How'd you look at it?
Well, they look at us as, I mean, they don't look at us as like licensing specialists, but when I walk into a program, sometimes they're like, hey, the boss is here, or so-and-so's here, you know, they're gonna help me do some stuff. So they look at you in a different, they don't look at you as peer-to-peer. There's a definite difference in those roles.
Yeah, a lot of times with coaching, it's more looked at as a peer-to-peer relationship, whereas training is typically looked at, I'm the expert and I'm going to tell you what to do because I know everything. And obviously that's going to cause some difficulties. Yeah, back.
The word I put down for coaching was encouragement, because I had knee surgery 9 weeks ago, and one of the requirements of this surgery is you have a coach. And I feel like, wow, talk about gold, you know, I need a functional knee. And it's very clear cut and very easy to follow, and it's very encouraging. But what a nice positive way to spin it.
Because some people also use the word sometimes kind of your cheerleader. They're there to boost you up and cheer you on and get that type of thing versus I'm going to tell you what you should be doing. And of course you can listen to me because I'm the expert. Yeah, comment or question?
The knowledge of adult learning, which is different than someone just training a skill. When you understand that you're talking to someone that is an adult and you understand that they learn differently, you come about what you bring to them differently.
Exactly.
You need to know what the difference in that is.
Yeah, dealing with adults are entirely different than dealing with kids. And that's what, when I first got into the field, my background was not in adult learning. My background was in secondary education, so I was dealing with high school students. Sometimes you
They
wonder.
look like adults.
Yeah. And yeah, then I found out very early when I started doing a lot of training and coaching that, yeah, adults are different. You can't do the same things with kids and students that you do with adults. They have a lot more experience that they're going to be drawing from. They have preconceived ideas that sometimes you're going to have to address before you actually get into skills and to content. So yes, dealing with adults is entirely different. And it's fun. Yes.
But a coach can't just cheerlead and encourage, they have to, at some point, point out the things that you need to change. I mean,
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, because when I think of a coach, I think my son played football for years, and I see this other image of the coach too. I don't see the cheerleader. I see that other side as the coach
Yeah.
too, so you need to be that as well.
Well, it's like they see the potential in
Exactly.
the recipient, so it's kind of like scaffolding, so you see that and you want to push them that little
and
bit.
Yeah,
then
and
it's the little things, like if you hold the ball, you tilt your, or whatever it is you're supposed to do and you spin.
So
they
little
can teach
skill,
you how to
skill
do that.
stuff,
Yeah.
skill stuff.
Yeah.
But again, you're looking, how am I going to improve those, you know, if you look at athletics, those particular skills. For that particular student may be entirely different than another student. So your coaching skills are going to have to be a little bit individualized too. And that's what you're doing too as adults. All right. I better move on or we could spend all day talking about this. So coaching supports development of specific skills and practices, focuses on outcomes. A lot of times it's collaboratively setting what are those goals, so sitting down with the person that you're coaching. What do you want to get out of this relationship? What is your intended purpose or outcome of this particular relationship? And then we do all sorts of things, and we'll talk about these in more detail as we go through the afternoon. And a lot of times, the coaching relationships, once you have achieved your outcomes, the coaching relationship goes away. I don't think that happens with you guys. You don't stop coaching a program. You're ongoing.
Your cell phone number.
Yes. So if you look at those side by side, the definitions, Are there any obvious differences that come out between those two?
Relationship.
Okay. Relationship-based is addressed more in coaching than in training.
Coaching builds capacity, so it builds on itself rather than anything as one layer.
Great. Other things? Yeah. So,
Coaching is more flexible. I think flexibility is the key there. It
Yeah.
can adapt to the person better.
yeah, because again, you're talking with that person that you're coaching and figuring out what do you need and how are we together as a team going to figure out how to do that. A lot of times with training, I've got a preconceived idea. This is what I'm going to be training you in, and these are the activities I'm going to be doing. There isn't quite as much flexibility typically. But if you think about training, riding a bicycle, what would a trainer do? So if you'll read through that real quick, can you read that on your PowerPoints, on your handouts? So look at the second one. It's talking about coaching and riding a bike. You know, what do you really do? Are you really training or are you really coaching?
But, so that starts out with the coach will begin by spending time with you, exploring the reasons why you want to ride a bike. And most training events don't, you can't do that with
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
You've
That's
got-
coaching.
But there can be a lot of experience.
Yeah, and a lot of that is that needs assessment. The needs assessment a lot of time is telling you why you're doing it. You're doing this because it's mandated by the state of Oregon.
So is there something in between where you've got a group of kids outside on a field and you say, okay, get on your bike and let's give it a first try, let's see what happens?
Just point
Or,
him
here's how you
downhill and
do.
pray, huh?
Yeah, I mean, well, no, but here's what you do, give it a try, and then we'll look
Yeah.
at what happened. And
Yeah, together we'll decide where do we go from here.
I feel like there's got to be something in between that, standing in front of the group and.
And I think that's kind of what the point that we're bringing out is a lot of times there's not a very clear definition. You're probably doing both of these. And is it important that you really care whether it's training or coaching? So don't get so hung up on the definitions.
What we care about is whether they get a certificate at the end.
Yeah. Do you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish? Do you do that through training or do you do that through coaching? And a lot of times people say, whoops, the real difference between the two, a lot of people say coaching is more the general big umbrella. Training is one of the things that you might do as part of your coaching. That's the way that some people view that. Or you can go the other way.
Yeah, so I saw it the other way. I thought,
Okay.
okay, they went to the training, they got a training first, and then figured out there were gaps they needed coaching. Because
Great. Bottom line, don't get hung up on terms. But just so you're out there, and when we talk about training and coaching, there may be differences or there may not be differences. So there are a series of 6 scenarios, and if you read through those, try to decide, is this really coaching or is this training or could it be either one?
How about you guys? Can you share some of the ideas that you use to come up with additional or to determine your technical assistant needs for programs and providers?
So basically everything that we talked about had to do with different ways of communication, whether it be communication with providers through site visits, through learning from provider feedback, to then from that provider feedback targeting different trainings. So basically all the TA needs were based off of different ways providers communicate with us, what their needs are. So we had ones that talking about looking at the professional development statements and seeing where the gaps are and what they might need, to looking at different providers' portfolios to see if they have a consistent gap and then base a training on that to find that gap for that similar challenge, and then just basically provide a feedback of seeing what their challenges are.
So tell me more about the looking at the portfolios. So are you talking about the portfolios that they've submitted and then received back, or getting together during maybe a cafe and looking at portfolios? I'm just curious.
That was actually based on my answer, and I was thinking
Uh-huh.
about that 4 months to go. And so, I mean, the way that you're gonna tell if there are gaps with a lot of people, whether or not you're gonna do a training or a coaching, is to see if there's similarities in what they're missing or what they're needing. And therefore, you can make it a group thing or individualized to meet the needs of the specific provider. Because a lot of times, the TA may not know what they need, but will not be able to articulate that, but I feel that the portfolio can help guide you there. It's kind of like when you're doing the plan, you know, you tell the person that you're working with, you know, just set the goals small. What are your small goals, and you know, and then go from there. And then once that happens, they're providing you the information.
Right, so you're using the portfolio then as a guide, just getting the ideas out of there and then building on what you're seeing is a little bit of a gap in between.
I can help answer that too. Is like we do a portfolio training and it's designed to, how do you write a written description? You know, what is a written description, what's a policy? And it's designed to say, okay, now you have a photo, but what is that photo telling, what do you want that photo to tell? So how do you write captions? What is it that you're trying to get? So it's more in the basics of how to do it, because some people just don't have some of that skill set and stuff, so it's not
Or know that
determining
they
the
have that
portfolio
skill set, you know,
or evaluating
right.
it, it's just look at your picture and is it really, and then try to describe it, and then they do it with partners and different things, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's not exactly what I intended that to say.
Yeah, you're helping them articulate what,
What
Yeah.
they need to say, or
What is it?
right.
Yeah.
right. And were you able to finish your list?
Yes, that was everything.
Okay, great, thank you for
So
sharing.
really, a lot of theirs is just around getting information from a lot of different sources as far as communicating, making sure that you're talking with the different people at the site. So through site visits or those type of things, and just making sure that you're in the loop constantly, and they're telling you what they need pretty clearly.
Getting it straight from the providers themselves.
It takes some repeat tries at getting that. I know the thing about the interest areas was a repeat try on getting that information for us, because the first thing was they just backed off after the IQT.
So what finally worked?
I had to use an interpreter, and the information I got back is, well, they're not pursuing this, they have to do this, you know, they have to do these interest centers, and they can't do that, and they're not pursuing this. And I sat and I thought about it, and I thought, well, where did that come from, you know? But it had all been filtered because we're using an interpreter. So I used a second interpreter to call and see what the discussion, who was giving this information out, is kind of what I was trying to go out. But it took a while. But basically there was a feedback loop among our Spanish-speaking providers that when they read the quality improvement plan and self-assessment, they felt their homes, these are family providers, needed to look like an interest center with the dividers and like our Head Start centers. That's what they compare it to. You know, and it was like, no.
So just the interpreting of the portfolio itself and what we were asking really needed some more interpretation from professional interpreters.
I've seen that happen with people that speak English and not speak Spanish. I heard someone say in the training that I sat in with you guys last week, that when we were talking about curriculum, they thought, do I have to go out and buy a boxed curriculum? Does everyone have to buy this
Right.
boxed thing? And so they heard something too that was, you know, in English. But so and that just happens. People interpret things in
Yes.
different ways, and that's why they have to hear it several times.
Great, and so we'll just, you know, summing that up a little bit is just communication, really good communication, and different types of communication.
And remembering that sometimes
following up.
the terms that we think are obvious, like curriculum, that we really have to define
Yeah.
for them, because they're not
Right.
obvious.
Great. Let's go ahead and move into this group, and if you could share what you guys came up with in your group.
Well, I've got something to add, can I just say it? In the quality improvement plan class that we've been offering, after we have them go through all the standards, the most important question we ask is there anything that surprised you, anything that concerns you? And that usually lasts about half an hour talking about it. And it's always something like, you want my home to look like a childcare center, or it
You
needs
want a
to
parent advisory board
Right,
sitting in
yeah,
my house
so-
telling me what to do?
Right. So that's the way that we get a lot of information about what kind of TA they need from those discussions.
But by just hearing them talk about
About what they're
their
concerned
open-ended conversation that they're having.
Questions again, if you don't mind, I'm gonna write them down.
What do you, after they've read through the standards, or they've done a matching game, what concerned you or what surprised you? What, so, okay,
It's
so,
also SurveyMonkey. Looking them up in Oro, we just did a letter, targeted letter to CS and RFs who had a 7 or higher. So we looked them all up in Oro because that report didn't come out until after we'd done all that.
So by looking at their step
Yeah, so
levels
then
and
you can
seeing,
say, yeah.
And where their gaps
Yeah.
are for training.
And then we
Great.
found a lot of people who qualified for steps who haven't applied, so that gives us some information on the targeting them for getting into Oro.
Okay.
One-on-one conversations, of course, the community cafes. And Terry's program has a new, is this a community cafe?
It's,
Or
it is,
it's a new
it is
cohort.
designed, it's the, yeah, so our community cafes are on the second Wednesday of the month and it's the fourth Monday. And it's called Reaching for a Higher Star, so anybody that's achieved a 3-star or higher and wants to move up a star, it's a cohort specifically for those groups, those providers.
And then we find out a lot at trainings, what people, I'm always surprised every time I do a training, I think of, well, this could be another training. And just in emailing.
so this is that's a really good way then to determine training needs in providers who have similar step levels.
Kind of universal
Yeah.
TA stuff.
I looked at you writing down email, and that reminded me of how when I did outreach, I thought, what I didn't even have email,
Right.
like that, that's a training, like how can you use technology in your program, just basic technology, but when I saw email, like, I wouldn't be able to reach a lot of people, like.
And I don't know if they said the same thing, as the feedback they get from their portfolio.
Yeah.
Helps you figure out what
So
kinds of
when
things they need.
when programs receive their portfolios after they've turned them in, yeah, we send a summary score sheet. So those of you that are new, I don't know if you know that. And then any item that they did, or any standard they did not pass, we have a short description of why they did not pass. So that's a great way to find out what
And then it's really
needs
good
they have.
just to celebrate it because, you know, for them, because sometimes it's, like, we have a center that's got 5 stars, 5 on every indicator except for personnel qualification 1. And so, and the director's not gonna be able to achieve that. So it's like, if you're doing a parent thing, say, we meet 32 of the 33 out of 5-star level, celebrate it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Great. So you guys use a lot of different ways to determine TA needs besides the quality improvement plan and the self-assessment and the professional development plan, and appreciate you sharing all those ideas. So we're going to actually jump into a very similar activity because you're already using effective coaching strategies for providing intensive technical assistance. And really, there's not a whole lot new that I'm going to be able to share with you, although we are going to go over some specific strategies. Let's see what you guys can come up with and share those out, and then we'll summarize what you have to say about that, and then what I've come up with, and then maybe some gaps afterwards that we missed. And actually, earlier in Gary's talk, I heard all kinds of interesting things already said today, so capturing some of what you said earlier about effective strategies. So
And-
Gary, did you?
And you might also look at the words that you put up in identifying training and coaching. How are you going to achieve some of these things? What do you do to teach? What do you do to expand knowledge? What do you do to support teamwork or skills? So what are the specific things that you do when you're out coaching, and specifically to when you're coaching to an individual, just one program or one individual person? So we're targeting this intensive level of technical assistance. So what specific coaching strategies do you do for a single provider or a single program? What are some strategies that you actually do?
Right.
and capture
Thank you.
those.
Yes, so we are talking about intensive technical assistance. So I'm hearing some really great ideas. Let's come back together as a group and share out some of these wonderful ideas, and then we'll go through the rest of the slides, and whatever, if people have additional ideas, please feel free to share anytime throughout the next 15 or so minutes. So let's start with you guys this time, and if you can share a couple of the coaching strategies that you already are doing that work well, that would be great.
Start with strengths and have them decide where to start.
So building on their strengths, and is that something that you help them determine? Or they determine themselves, or what does that look like?
Well, it depends on how you're doing it. If you're using the QIP, then you can see where they're.
Absolutely.
Right.
So using the quality improvement plan, you're seeing where they're marking yes, 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 but then you'll see a gap and say, oh, that's a great place to begin with. Great. How about one more of your
the
ideas?
Relationship, the
Pardon?
building rapport and trust for the relationship.
Building relationships. Can you give me an example of what a strategy for building a supportive relationship looks like? Or anybody in your group? Pardon?
Being an active listener.
Being an active listener. Okay. Great.
Letting them tell you what, not going in with an agenda.
Not going in with an agenda and letting them come up with the answer.
Yeah, what do you feel is the most pressing, or
What do
how
you-
can I help you the most, or something?
Open-ended questions is what I'm hearing, yeah. Great. Those are wonderful strategies. Okay, this group, can you please share some of what you came up with?
I mean, we kind of had similar, it's building the relationship, but one I really liked was recognizing communication styles and understanding one provider might do really well with email, and another one might do really well with a phone call, and really understanding for coaching purposes the best way to communicate with that provider, as well as just being inclusive to their practices and what they're doing, and really understanding, and we talked about how coaching is constantly changing depending upon the need of the provider, so really being able to focus on the fact that it will continually change, and so how you meet the need of the provider with coaching. Whereas in a training, it is one track, but coaching is constantly changing.
It's like customer service.
Yes.
Providing customer service.
Providing that individualized service, knowing their styles, those are great points to remember when you're.
Well, you also, as a coach, you gotta pump them up a little bit.
Yeah, we put that too. Attitude is everything. You want to go in with good energy and you want them to feel good. So, so your attitude, how you present yourself, that energy. The lady in the back, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, and I apologize, but
That's right.
Nancy, she was saying, sometimes no matter what the energy may look like, some people just fit better with other people. So if you have the opportunity to be able to have multiple trainers to kind of fit them up right.
And isn't that so true if you go into a large child care center? There's certain teachers that will relate better to certain children, and that doesn't change as you become adults. So that's a great point.
We assign everybody a primary caregiver. Each QRIS participant gets a primary caregiver.
So you're paralleling what you're hoping that they're doing in their programs. Wonderful. I love these ideas. We're going to continue to move on because time is ticking. But great ideas, and you guys are the experts. You're already doing this, and that's why we're sharing so many ideas with each other. So these are the ones that Gary and I came up with, and I don't think we'll be real surprised if they're any different than what you came up with. Building rapport to create and develop a supportive relationship. There are many ways to do that. And again, knowing the different styles of the people. Some like face-to-face, some will be more comfortable with phone calls or emails. When you're doing a training, trying to just touch base, even if it's for a few minutes. If they know your face, right, they're going to be more likely to call you. Mutually agreeing to work together. So I heard somebody, I can't remember, saying it's not your agenda, my agenda, it's theirs. They have to have that buy-in. And if you're just saying, well, boy, you're really weak in this area, you really need training on that, that's not gonna work, right? They have to be able to buy into that.
Can I piggyback on that? And that's also the goal is to kind of give them that sense of empowerment too. A lot of times when we were talking about, I don't know your name either. She was talking about that initial fear when you first start getting people in training that, well, does this mean I have to have a parent panel in my house? Because all of it just seems so
Right.
overwhelming at first. After you get your, a few stars and, you're kind of rolling with it, you understand it a little bit better. But it's kind of, being able to explain things and make sure that when you're leaving that they feel comfortable enough to have that sense of empowerment to want to take.
Right. And allowing people to have that time to be able to feel comfortable too.
I was just gonna add, like, on that particular one, the parent thing, it's not, they don't have to have an advisory board, they can
No.
have a parent training. Right.
Yes.
You know
So
that.
this is-
No,
that
this is
sounds
what a
wonderful.
provider says.
Yes.
That's an example.
Right, but
Yeah.
once you get them past that, oh, I just
Yeah.
need to do this, then
Yeah.
they relax.
That's another discussion altogether. And I've heard this come up several times, asking the reflective questions and using open-ended state comments. So using the quality improvement plan or the self-assessment professional development plan, when you were doing your self-assessment, what came up for you? What did you, what areas were kind of consistently? So those are not yes and no questions. Those are reflective questions. You're having them really go back and think about what they already have. So just continuing the reflective. And again, that's how we find out what their interests are, right? And where they're feeling, their strengths, and where they're maybe not feeling so strong. And that goes right along with identifying and building strengths. And that's how you determine those, by asking those open-ended questions and building that relationship. And then setting agreed upon goals that are specific and attainable. And we talked a little bit about using the SMART goal approach. You can modify that to not make it 5 steps, but maybe make it 3 steps. So however that works, it's not like you do have intensive TA time, but you don't have a lot of intensive TA time. So you have to really make it count. And then some of the TA will be on-site support. Again, not for every program. There may be some providers and programs that need more of that TA, right? And what types of support might you provide on-site for intensive TA?
Observation, assessment,
Be an outside observer.
curriculum, environmental, helping organize the environment, organize shelves, anything and everything.
Great. So I heard you say assessments. So you can maybe provide a program assessment or a child assessment, an ASQ if they're just learning how to use that. You can do observations and provide feedback. So maybe do an adult-child observation and give specific feedback about what their strengths are and what recommendations you may have. Again, after you do an on-site, you're going to need to do follow-up support. So there's all kinds of ways to do that follow-up support, whether it be emails, phone calls, work cafes where they come in and you just follow up with them. And we're running out of time, so I'm going a little bit quick, but if you have other ideas, please chime in. And then there's some web-based supports that we can offer. If they're a QRIS participant, they have access to the QRIS resources website. Is that what it's called? Resources website. Has a lot of templates, links, all kinds of resources for them. And then just things that you've read that you want to share with them. And then reviewing materials, which is sort of minor because, again, we're not helping them put their portfolio together. It really is about quality improvement. But you can review something and then ask those reflective, open-ended questions.
Well, and sometimes you catch something really small, like, oh, I don't see a professional development plan here, oh. That's in my opinion, that's the intent of reviewing a portfolio before they mail it, is just to flip really quickly and decide whether they missed something.
Great, and that's just a really nice, it's a supportive, and that can also build relationships showing you really care, you want. So just going through their portfolio, making sure it's complete. great idea.
Because you might just also just review the policy. Does the policy make sense? You know, you may not judge as far as whether it'll meet the criteria for passing, but does the policy actually make sense if somebody else reads it? Because I write a policy and it makes perfect sense to me, but Terry reads it and you go, oh my God, what does this mean?
Yeah.
It's a bunch of words thrown together and it doesn't really mean anything.
And then other additional resources, of course, hooking them up to training, either training you can provide or training around the state, scholarships through the OCCD, so financial aid.
Or your own office.
Yeah, or your own office. Yeah, you guys provide a lot of training. You know, where maybe folks can access financial aid because we know childcare providers don't make very much money. And then just hooking them up with their community college when they're ready to go that next step beyond just community training. It's really important that we're trying to focus on that higher education piece and getting more providers into that arena.
It's more cost effective too.
So any questions or additional comments or strategies you want to share with what we just went over? So we're just a review of what we went over today. The differences between coaching and training, which Gary went over earlier, and how they are very much related and they can overlap. The different tiers of TA. These are the terms we use for QRIS. And that's the universal, targeted, and intensive. And then we mostly really shared effective coaching strategies for providing intensive today. We didn't tell you anything that you don't already know. You're doing wonderful work, and we're here to support each other, just like we want to support our programs. And I think you guys came up with and shared a lot of really good ideas, and I hope that you can take some of that home with you and or back to work with you. Don't take it home with you. No, leave work at work. So we thank you for joining our little session and really making it a supportive and sharing process for all of us.